So, I think it's important that we always try and stretch our minds a little bit. So, I'm going to give you a couple big words today, but I'll explain them too. So, the first one is one that we use in a sacrament. It's the word contrition. The other one is kind of a funny word, but it's transference. And the last one is another churchy word called grace. So first I'm going to start with transference, and then contrition, and then grace. All right? So first, transference. There's this funny thing that happens to us, and it works kind of like this. There are times where we don't feel good about ourselves. There may be a day where I get a bad grade on a test, or there may be a day when I do something wrong and maybe I have to sit in time out for a little bit at home, or maybe I get corrected by one of my teachers. And so sometimes we're not feeling good about ourselves. And there's this weird thing that happens inside our brains. Instead of trying to work on what we need to work on ourselves, like working harder to get a better grade, or trying to behave more when we're in class or at home, sometimes what we do is we start looking at the faults of other people. We start trying to point to other people about what they do wrong. I know this has never happened with any of you, but sometimes there are people that we would call tattletales. Do you know that term? It's a tattletale. You want to try? Yeah, go ahead, try it. It's when you tell, but sometimes it's different. So if somebody does something wrong or dangerous or unkind, it's okay to say something. But there's other times where we're trying to get someone else in trouble, right? And that's not really good, is it? No. And so what happens is we start pointing out the faults of other people, and we don't look inside at our own faults. And that's what Jesus is talking about in the gospel today. And he gives us kind of a funny example. He says, how can you pretend to try and take a splinter out of someone else's eye when you've got this huge 2x4 sticking out of your eye? Now that's kind of a funny image. Imagine somebody walking around with this big old chunk of wood sticking out of their eye going, hey, let me help you get that little speck out of your eye. That would seem silly, right? You'd say, what are you doing? Get away from me. Well, that's what Jesus is saying, is that most of the time when we start looking at the faults of others, when we start paying more attention to other people's problems and other people's faults, we're not paying attention to ourselves. And St. Paul helps us with that. He says, for a while in his life, he was a scoundrel. A scoundrel is a great name. A scoundrel is someone who was famous for doing bad things. That's a scoundrel. Nobody wants that kind of fame. And St. Paul was famous, which there's another word, infamous, for doing bad things. He would find Christians and he would drag them out of their homes and he would persecute them and hurt them. And he came to a point in his life where he met Jesus. Jesus spoke to him and he realized what he was doing wrong. That's where that word contrition comes in. Contrition literally means a broken heart. And that's how God gets into our hearts. When we do something wrong, when we hurt other people, when we are not following God's plan for our lives, the way we are able to change is when we are brokenhearted over our own sins, when we allow our hearts to be sad because we know that we have done something wrong. That's how God enters into our heart, is when it's broken open, and that's how he changes our heart. That's how he helps our hearts to receive this amazing gift that he wants to give us, this gift of grace. And grace is just kind of another way of saying the love of God. God loves us so much that he wants to help us in our daily lives. He wants to help us to grow and to change and to be better each day. And so he gives us that gift of grace to help our hearts to be shaped more like his heart, a heart that has love and mercy. And so instead of spending our time and our energy looking at the faults of people around us, we spend our time and energy realizing that I've got places that need to change and grow, that I've got things in my life that I need to improve. that I've got areas where I need to be more like Jesus. And when we do that, we start to see how God is shaping our lives and how He's helping all of us to become those saints of God. And that's why we gather here together. When we gather in church, we have a school kind of, not just Sacred Heart Cathedral School, but we have a school of saints. And that's what the church is. It's a school of saints. It's where we learn what sainthood looks like, what it means to be holy. And God calls each one of us to be holy and to be saints. And so I can't wait. You know, today we're talking about St. Paul. And there's a priest in Chattanooga, Father Patrick Ryan, who might be declared a saint someday. But I can't wait until one of us here also becomes one of those saints, that our lives show to the world something special about God's love. And each one of us has that ability. Each one of us has that call from God. And so today I invite you to go back through and think about, am I spending more of my time focused and thinking about other people's problems, or am I spending my time thinking about how I can grow and change to be better? And am I letting my heart be broken open so that I can receive the grace and the love of God and be called to holiness?